Let me call this meeting of the Yosemite Community College District Board of Trustees for Wednesday, July 11, 2018 to order. If I could all get you to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and now moving on to item 3.2, report out from closed session. And the only item I have is that with respect to item 2.3, Trustee Leslie Beggs recused herself from that discussion item. We will now move on, unless I'm forgetting anything else. I don't think so. Okay. Moving on now to item 3.3, approval of minutes of the June 13th, 2018 Board of Trustees meeting. I'll give my fellow trustees a few moments to review those minutes and entertain a motion to approve.
Chair Garrett, I move for the approval of the minutes of the June 13th meeting and the June 19th meeting, if there's no corrections.
Okay, so that would be for our regular meeting and then the study session on June 19th, which is item 3.4. Moving right along this evening. So we got a motion and a second by Trustee Rojas. Is there any further discussion? Seeing or hearing?
Graciela wants to add.
Yes.
Probably, pardon me, correction on the study session minutes. If we can just make note that Trustee Martin was not present. I did not include her name in that, so that's a correction.
Okay, so with that correction, the motion still stands and
Yes,
being nods from both?
as corrected,
Okay.
yes.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on now to item 3.5, public comment. Is there any member of the public? Yes.
Second on that?
Oh, the first was Trustee DeMartini, second was Trustee Rojas.
Thank you.
You bet. Now back to item 3.5. Do we have any cards for public comment? No cards. Anyone else wish to address the board on any item or matter that is not on the posted agenda? Okay. Moving right along. Item 4.1, Board Finance Committee report. There was no meeting for the Board Finance Committee, so we'll dispense with that. Move on now to item 4.2, Board Policy Committee, and I'll turn that over to Trustee DeMartini.
Thank you, Darren. We had this Policy and Procedure Committee meeting a week early. My thanks to those who attended to accommodate me with the conflict that I had. We had very few changes. We had none in the second readings, and in the first readings we had a few, and those slight changes have been passed out to the board, and we will cover that when we get to that adoption.
Okay, any questions for Trustee DeMartini? Nope. Okay, moving on now to item 5.1, Association reports. And we'll start with Student Senate activity reports.
Good evening, members of the board. Hope you all had a great 4th of July. Starting with the report, on July 1st, ASMGC members went on a hike to Mission Peak. It was a great bonding experience. It helped the ASMGC members and taught us how to help and push each other in times of crisis. It was a great group effort, and seeing everyone together really made my day. On July 9th, all the members of the ASMGC were sworn in by Vice President of Student Services, Dr. James Todd, and the Vice President of Administrative Services, Dr. Albert Alt. I would also like to thank Dr. James Todd and Dr. Albert Alt for attending the ceremony and sharing their words of wisdom. All of the members are excited to work towards a common goal. All of us are grateful for this opportunity and are ready to continue the work started by Mr. Burgess. On July 19th, ASMGC will be attending the ASMGC Foundation's Summer Sonata, and the members are looking forward to this volunteer opportunity. For reference, our team will be volunteering as servers for the event. Currently, ASMGC members are attending their regular trainings, and I'm pleased to share that the members are forming a great bond, and hopefully this will continue and we'll become stronger together. Any questions?
Thank you
you.
very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Do we have anyone for Columbia College? Do we have a report from Columbia? Okay, perfect. All right, moving on now to item 2, Academic Senate Activity Reports. Got one? All right, perfect.
Hello, I'm Nathan Reen. I'm the Academic Senate President at Columbia College. My apologies for being absent last month. We were sent to a leadership institute in San Diego. Columbia College is proud to report the following. Mr. Santanu Bandyopadhyay will be assuming his new role as Columbia College President this coming Monday, July 16, 2018. Columbia College is very happy to have Mr. Bandyopadhyay as its new president. Academic Senate President Nathan Reen, myself, and President-elect Pam Guerra-Schmidt attended the Faculty Leadership Institute from June 14th to the 16th in San Diego. Topics of discussion included the community college budget, building an effective Senate by strengthening relationships, being emotionally intelligent leaders, goal setting and metrics, as well as ensuring high academic standards through minimum qualifications, equivalency, and assigning courses to disciplines through that process. Currently, Curriculum Chair Kathy Schultz and Curriculum Process Specialist Elisa Creighton are attending the Curriculum Institute this week from July 11th to the 14th. In Riverside, topics of discussion will be centered around AB 705, which currently Columbia College has implemented and aligned multiple measures in anticipation of the Chancellor's Office request for local goals, data collection, monitoring. The college is at the beginning stages of this process, but moving forward, the Academic Senate is trying to urge innovative practices, courageous conversation, and rigorous evaluation in this area. Other topics of concern at the Curriculum Institute are guided pathways, UC transfer pathways, and curriculum streamlining. The Academic Senate has been in the process of planning for a successful 2018-19 school year at Columbia College. Part of those plans include our faculty retreat, which is an annual faculty retreat, and that's August 17th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Baker Station. Our tentative theme is Mindsets to Mind Shift, and that's based upon the book by author Dr. Barbara Oakley entitled Mind Shift. We also have begun strategic planning for successful adjunct faculty and all staff in-service days, and we're trying to find ways to enhance our faculty hiring prioritization process and systems. Currently, I'm in the process, along with other Senate leaders, of assigning mentors to new faculty on campus for the fall and spring semesters for all of our new hires. And we're excited to continue to help in the accreditation follow-up report process. Thank you.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you
I
very
do.
much.
I have one question, Nate. How do you go about assigning mentors to your new faculty?
It's a process where we try and we try and identify someone who's not in the same discipline, because we try and make sure that there's a mentor in the same discipline. For example, when I was hired as an HHP basketball coach in the physical education department, my mentor was Josh Bigelow, Morgan McBride, et cetera. But I also had one assigned to me, Bill Wilson, who was in the psychology department. So we try and pair people up with someone from out of their discipline too, to get a greater perspective. And then as the Senate President, my role is to go to other Senate leaders and leaders on campus and try and gather up who do you think would be a good fit for this person and who will help engage this person in the college atmosphere and process of governing. So,
Thank you, Nathan. Any questions? Nope. Very good. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to LTAC. I saw Klaus here earlier. There he is.
Good evening. Just as a reminder, LTAC dues were due in January 4th, and the LTAC dues fund scholarship established at both colleges in an amount of $500 for students. We will request payment of the people who have not paid during our July 23rd retreat in Oakdale, right. We also have scheduled two socials, both on August 15th from 5 p.m. to 6:30. In Modesto, we will gather at Patio 4, Camp 4 and the patio in Modesto, and at the service station in Jamestown. We have currently looking at revising the LTAC handbook, especially the measurable goal form, Section H, evaluations, and Section G12, professional education program. And we have awarded $500 scholarships, one to a Columbia student, Summer Williams, an elementary education major, who is a re-entry student in her fourth semester, single mom with two boys, very inspiring story. And we received a very nice thank you card from her, as well as a gentleman at MJC, the name still to be announced because he wasn't informed yet. He has a GPA of 3.72 and he will transfer to the CSU in the fall. That's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions? No, but I know we all appreciate the update on the scholarships. I think that's great with LTAC, and I know the other associations do the same thing, so thank you.
Thank you.
It's really nice. Okay, moving on now to the Yosemite Faculty Association. Jim?
Hello, I'm Jim Solomon. I'm president of the Yosemite Faculty Association. The YFA and YCCD will be entering the fact-finding phase of impasse following the two mediation sessions in May that did not produce any resolution. The faculty continue to be baffled by the district's lack of urgency to settle an agreement. Columbia College now has a new president who will be facing an environment where the district's relationship with the faculty is broken. At MJC, the wedge between the district and the faculty has expanded even wider following the recent decision to restart the MJC presidential search, despite having a candidate who was enthusiastically supported, is well respected, and could have restored our damaged relationship with the community. The fall semester starts in 47 days. Just a small number of days prior to August 27th, both colleges in this district will hold their annual new faculty orientations. In past years, the YFA would have welcomed the new faculty and provided a general overview about the collective bargaining agreement, highlighted the faculty's responsibilities, and clarified various faculty rights. How can the YFA follow the same script, however, given our current environment? At what point do we inform our newest crop of FTES generating and FTES reinforcing faculty about the relationship with the district as being obviously unimportant, since the YCCD has let this scenario drag on month after month? If the opposite is true, and the YCCD wants the faculty to believe that it truly values us, then do something about it and demonstrate some urgency to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions for Jim? Nope. Thank you, Jim. Moving on now to California School Employees Association. Sherry?
Good evening. Board of Trustees, Chancellor's Cabinet, Chancellor Yong. Since this is my first official presentation to the board since becoming CSEA president, I was looking forward to an upbeat message to start this new fiscal year off with. However, two recent incidents that have occurred over these last few weeks have caused some changes to my message. Please note that my philosophy as a person is I believe that the glass is half full and everyone has a right to a voice and an opinion. Over these last few weeks, we have had two major situations occur at MJC that has created a lot of stress and questions from employees working for the district. One, the pool incident with major facilities being affected, causing employees to be displaced, and quite frankly, some being so thankful that this incident happened at the time it did, or we could be facing some huge tragedies. And I had those employees sitting in my office on the verge of panic attacks. The decision that Chancellor Yong, number two, the decision that Chancellor Yong has made in regards to going back out in search for the president position in fall, when there was such a positive response to one of the candidates that presented at the forum. I've been contacted by many employees on both of these matters, asking me if I have any insight on these issues, and that if I could shed any light to their unanswered questions. I have spoken with a few employees who, like I said, were so shaken up by that pool incident. Just the thought of what could have happened to them personally and other employees that should and could have been in that area at the time of the accident. This has put a lot of stress in their lives. I've tried to get them what answers I can, and thankfully, information has come out to managers from our VPs about our EAP program to help members cope with the situation that they are in. With all that said, the main theme that I keep getting is, where is the district in all of this? Now, I know because of my job and scheduling that meetings, phone conversations have taken place, and that our VP has been sending out what update he receives to managers to keep their employees informed as much as possible. However, to my knowledge, not one email from our district leadership has gone out campus-wide in regards to the facility issue. On the presidential candidate issue, we have received one campus-wide email sent from Graciela on behalf of Chancellor Young, letting the district know that his decision not to accept either one of the candidates, and that we would go back out in the fall for another search. This is the extent of any communication that the campus-wide has received. This lack of communication falls short of what is expected from our leadership team. MJC is currently without a president, and it is my understanding that some of the VPs have been assigned days to cover the administrator in charge. But I only know this information because on Monday, I had a CSEA issue and had to make phone calls to find out who that was. The campus has not been informed of any of this information. We had such great participation in the Presidential Candidate Forum, and I'd like to extend my thanks to all that participated and gave input. While I've continued to hear the same message, why do we bother to continue on committees and give input if it seems like the input is not even considered? And in the case of the presidential search, there are also lots of comments that went in for that. So I started looking through the YCCD strategic plan for 2016 through 2021, and I found some interesting stuff. Quality staff states the following: recognize and foster internal advancement of employees by supporting professional growth and leadership excellence. Identify and recognize staff excellence and expertise throughout the district. Campus climate states the following: the Yosemite Community College District is dedicated to civility, acceptance, mutual respect, which are reflected in inclusiveness of all students and staff, high morale, health, wellness, teamwork, and participatory governance. YCCD will support an inclusive environment that fosters respect and appreciation of all staff and students. I'm also the kind of person that if things are not going right, I try to look within myself to see if there is something that I have not done that maybe I could do to help contribute to make this a better situation. So as I looked at the information from the strategic plan that YCCD has committed to, I believe we have fallen short in executing in our two most recent situations. And I thought maybe with there being new leadership in quite a few roles at the district, maybe they are not aware of what we as employees would like to see. So I would like to respectfully ask from the YCCD cabinet that we as employees would appreciate communication, transparency, and information, as we believe those are some key components to making this institution a great place. I've also been told that it's always a good idea, if there's a problem,
Don't just come to the table with your complaints. Try to offer possible solutions as well. So as I have heard several of you tell us in open forums, you have an open door policy. How about you reversing that and coming to our office places? Add that personal human touch to show employees you are here for them, concerned about their well-being, and reinforce the campus climate statements for staff morale, health, wellness, teamwork, and help foster the repair that is badly needed at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Any questions? Nope. All right, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on now to item 5.2, activities and announcements, Modesto Junior College. Oh, sorry. Way ahead of myself. Sorry, Alan. It's probably because you and I had such a long meeting together. I just, you know.
Well, wasn't quite all said, but most of it was said during our meeting, which I enjoyed thoroughly.
Yes.
Since our last meeting, besides meeting with the chair, what I consider to have been an excellent meeting with Chancellor Yong, and also spoken to several trustees on matters of concern to the faculty. I'm very pleased when they contact me about something on their mind, and like I said, I really do want to get together one-on-one with all members of the board before the summer's out. I also attended the June 19th board training session on due process investigation of alleged employee misconduct. I was encouraged by the discussion and by the interest shown by board members to this issue. There we go. As you may know, there's been discussion and frustration and confusion around these issues of due process, depending on how you count the time for 2, 4, or 6 years. But like I was told by a board member, it's really time we put this to bed, and I could not agree more. For the past 5 weeks, I've been teaching communications courses in summer session, a 5-week summer session. Most of my students are taking 2 or even 3 courses at once. Their determination and endurance is amazing, and I do not forget to tell them so. I remember when I was taking at Glendale Community College in Southern California, 2 courses in a 5-week session, and I was working part-time, and how terribly sorry I felt for myself until I till I got in stride about 3 weeks into the 5 weeks. But they're amazing, and they're a credit to all of us, and I tell them so.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions for Alan? Okay. Now we'll move on to item 5.2, activities announcements, Modesto Junior College. Anyone? That wouldn't be Dr. James Todd, maybe? I don't know. No, he's got this puzzled look on his face. Okay. Okay. No announcements. They're listed on the agenda. And I'm taking the same for 5.3 for Columbia. Okay, so they're listed on the posted agenda. We'll move right into item 5.4, presentation and updates, Yosemite Community College District Chancellor, Chancellor Yong.
Thank you. On the first item regarding the pool incident, I'd like to turn the time over to Vice Chancellor Susan Yeager, who will give us an update regarding the pool incident.
Good evening, Chairman Garrett, Chancellor Young, trustees. We are going to give you, it's on.
It's on.
It's on. Let me try to get it closer. Is that better? We're going to give you an update tonight on the pool incident, and I'm going to invite some others up here to help me with this. So on June 17th, a mechanical failure at the MJC swimming pool occurred, resulting in damage to the pool, 5 buildings, and a storage unit. The buildings are closed, and students and staff have been temporarily relocated. The blast occurred at approximately 6 a.m. in the morning. We're very fortunate in that. that the area was not populated, although we did have one staff member that sought treatment from the company nurse. The district implemented its emergency operations plan for notifying personnel, and facilities, security, and risk management personnel were on site fairly quickly. And of course, the fire department was there, as well as the Stanislaus County Environmental Services, MID, and PG&E. So the main thing that happened was a CO2 canister, which was new. It had been recently installed a couple of weeks previously and filled a week before the accident, approximately a week, maybe 5 days. A canister exploded, and parts of it went everywhere. And it also took out it exploded against the canister next to it, causing it to shoot across the alley and go into the shed that's on the other side of the alley. Shrapnel hit several buildings, and I'll leave Judy Lanchester, our Director of Facilities, to describe the damage to you. The cause of the accident is under investigation by the fire investigator assigned by our insurance company. So we will know more about that later, but for right now, it's simply an open investigation. On the day of the incident, Stanislaus County required that there were chemicals spilled, including chlorine and muriatic acid. And if you'll recall, that particular Sunday was Father's Day. And so the Stanislaus County Environmental Services required that we get someone out there to clean up those chemicals. Thankfully, Judy Lanchester maintains very good relationships with local vendors, and largely because of that, we were able to get company vendors out to not only clean up the spill, but to erect fencing around the site. We are currently working with our insurance company, the insurance adjuster, and the team that has been assigned to clean up the site, because there's still cleanup to do inside the buildings that were impacted, and to repair the buildings where necessary. We have been working very closely with the college. It's been a team effort from pretty much that Sunday to now. We early on made a conscious decision, and listening to Sherry perhaps wrongly, but we did make a conscious decision that the district would focus on the buildings, working with the insurance company, getting them up and running again. We would have daily phone calls with college personnel. We gave them as much information as we could. We heard their concerns, and we tried to, make that a give and take. It's been very much a team effort these past weeks. So in that regard, I think we have a good model as we're moving forward. So at this point, I'd like to bring Judy Lanchester, our facilities director, forward to discuss some of the damage with you and show you some of that. And then we'll have Al out I'm sorry, Al, I'm going to forget your title because it's got that, hang on. Vice President of College and Administrative Services from the college, to help us out with the impacts on college operations. Judy?
Good evening. I'm here this evening to share the condition of the buildings with you, and at any time during the overview of these buildings, if you would like to ask a question, you may do so, or we have a question portion at the end of the presentation after Dr. Alt. And I hope I'm going to do this right, and if I don't slide this forward correctly, please let me know. Graciela. Where's the clicker? Okay. That's okay. Can I turn this right? Nope. Perfect. Okay. Did you want to talk about AC?
I'm sorry, just briefly, the accident is covered by insurance company. Our deductible is $5,000. There is a $6 million property limit with the ASCIP pool retaining the first $1 million. My understanding, I'm sorry.
6 million or 600 million?
I'm sorry, 600 million. Thank you, Ann.
Okay,
I
so,
was going a little too fast there. The A-skip pool retains the first million, and my understanding is that within the first week, they had set aside approximately $1 million for this claim. We don't think it will be that much, but there's so much involved that the adjuster felt that that was the appropriate amount.
Thank you, Susan. I also have maps for you this evening if you would like them during this presentation. Would you like that? An overview of the area that we're going to discuss. All right, the gymnasium. We're going to start with that building. The gymnasium building has some broken glass located on the front face of the building, which is the street side of the building. We have broken doors. The doors are mostly broken in the mechanical component. These are the locks and also the mechanisms that use to push the doors open. We also have various broken lights in the particular building. You'll see throughout this portion of the discussion in this presentation that we're going to be talking about the electrical system evaluation. And that is because of the result of the percussion of this particular accident. It caused the doors, it caused the electrical systems to move a bit. We're also going to be looking at the HVAC systems because many of those are located on the roof lines. So expansion and contraction in these particular buildings may cause an effect in these to where the HVAC units could have been damaged. So these will need to be evaluated. We're also talking about the cleanup. Why do the buildings need to be cleaned up? During this percussion or this explosion, the chlorine was pushed into the gymnasium and somewhat of a cloud, as we can assume, as we weren't at the area. That chlorine translated into the buildings, which then needed to be cleaned up. They have been inspecting the buildings as they've been moving through them, and the cleanup is moving along quite well. And we'll talk about the schedule, and you'll see some of the pictures that I'm talking about in this presentation a little later. The library, we have broken panes in the windows. This was the older side of the building, the panes that were not replaced. It's between the library and the gym. We have broken doors, very similar to the gymnasium. And again, the electrical system needs to be reviewed in that area. This particular building has boilers on the bottom level. Those will need to be looked at and a pressure test done on the gas lines to make sure it's safe before we re-energize those gas lines. And general cleanup. Men's physical education, again, broken windows, doors, structural damage to the roof line and the exterior walls, broken skylight, damaged electrical panel, which you'll see a little later in the presentation, HVAC, gas line evaluation, and cleanup as well. Physical education, same sorts of things in this particular building that we're seeing. The pool, we're seeing the fence is damaged significantly on one side of the fence. Mechanical damage to the pools. The 2 CO2 tanks are gone. The muriatic acid tank is damaged, and one of the pool heaters and various pump and mechanical systems at that pool, plus the heater is damaged. The storage unit, I will call that a full failure. I would not have it operating here for our staff, in my opinion. It needs to be disposed of and a new one brought in. Women's physical education has broken doors and the same sort of thing. We're seeing quite a bit of the same injury to the buildings, if you will, or damage. This is the damage to the storage unit. The picture on your left shows the alley perspective of the pool located to your right, and it shows the fence into the storage unit, and also in the bottom frame over on the right-hand side. What is telling about this is that the fence went into the building along with the CO2 tank and came out the other side, but hit the concrete of the gym and remained stationed inside of the storage unit. Whoops, went one too far. This is a before and after picture for you. This is the damage to the pool mechanicals. If you're looking at the gate in both of these pictures, you're seeing the one in the after picture as askew. This is the side that took a pretty good amount of the impact. The CO2 tanks were located mostly on this side. It took out the window, the panel, the electrical panel. The shadow box that you see there on your left was where the electrical panel was located. On your left-hand side of that photo, the metal piece that's closest in that frame is the door. It's actually in half. And then off to your left is a part of the CO2 tank that went through a CMU wall. This is a before and after of the mechanical area again. Off to your left, on the left side of that frame, you will see the two CO2 tanks that are no longer there in the after picture. This is the roof line that I've been talking about for the men's physical education that needs to be structurally reviewed. This is the office of the sports trainer, and it's mostly askew is what it is in that particular. You can see the window went out in the frame, and then the roof line went down. This is the library building, the windows that were damaged in the library. And the physical education office had one window that was broken, and then most of the doors on that side and the right frame have been damaged. All of the jambs are damaged, and most of the windows on there, some of them we've lost the glass on, and others we've just have torn frames on currently. These are the gymnasium doors. They actually blew out and then blew back in, so the bolts inside of the frames of the doors are damaged, and you can see the hardware is damaged as well. So we've seen what happened with the incident. So how do we put it back together? There's been a lot of work that has taken place over the last 3 weeks. A lot of it had to happen sequentially because we had to have cleaning happen before certain hazardous situations had to be handled. That type of thing before we can get people in and really pulling this together so that we're getting this building back as quickly as possible. And I have to echo what Susan said earlier. This has really been a team effort. One of the VPs and I were talking about a week ago about how well we worked together in this incident, and it really has been, it's been the worst of times and the best of times in many, many respects. The pool timeline, July 10th, we had a joint site inspection. The fire investigator was there with also the manufacturer of the tank and also the vendors that filled the tank and installed the tank. A meeting was scheduled with a consultant to develop a pool restoration plan today. One of the things that they asked us to do was to put large quantities of chlorine into the pool. This is the second time that we've done that. And we're also looking at either a skid application that will bring a large pump onto the campus that we can put on the deck to circulate the water inside of the pool to maintain the health of the pool. The PE offices are going to be cleaned, and they're going to be we're going to be in there cleaning through July 22nd. There's contents inside of the men's PE building, such as uniforms, helmets, physical education equipment that is needed. They're cleaning that and turning that over to the campus as quickly as possible. On the 13th, the library and the gym will be cleaned. They're starting that. We're waiting power restoration to the men's PE building to walk through that building for repairs. On July 14th, we're going to be inspecting the power over in that area, and on campus that day will not only be the actual inspector for that, but also the person who's going to be making the repair. So we're going to have a dual cause there, trying to get this back into motion. MID has been placed on notice, and they're ready and willing to come on out and re-energize us as soon as they can. We're also looking into pressure testing for the gas lines so we can get those back up and moving as quickly as possible. On July 16th, the construction company is going to be on campus to move through these buildings to look at the repairs and how quickly they can make them. Some of them can be made very quickly depending upon the light fixtures and the doors, those types of things. You can bring in new doors pretty quickly, and hardware is not too bad. The tentative move-in date for PE offices is July 23rd. We don't have a timeline yet for the pool, and the reason why is because at this time, we have to do more investigation on the pool before we're able to bring that back online. Okay? Sure. It's the PE offices, yeah. The women's PE building will be coming on, we're hoping very near to that timeline. The library as well. The library's done, it's already cleaned. We're just waiting for power generation to come back online. So we're hoping that most of those facilities will be back by the 23rd with the exception of the pool. We hope. Again, we have to look and see what's happened with the HVC units, with the electrical systems, because you certainly can't have physical education in 100-degree weather with students in there with no AC. We're going to have a health risk on that side if we bring people back too quickly.
The unit, are we using chlorine powder, chlorine granules, chlorine gas?
It's chlorine pellets. They're actually pellets that go through a hopper and they mix with a water and then go into the pool. And then so there's a synergy between, oh, okay.
Just asking you what they're.
Pellets. That's what they were using was pellets.
And the circulation, the return, you mentioned that you're going to do something to circulate the water back.
Yeah, there's temporary skids. There's pumps, large pumps that will come on a trailer, if you will, that can be placed near the pool to start the water churning and also to do, in effect, what the pool pump systems and the heaters do to the pools. Okay, that's to keep the health up.
Renovating that part, right?
We do have to renovate it, yes. And that's a really good question, Abe.
The water has been cleared and filtered before.
It's been what?
Filtered.
Yes. Yes.
Because I've been there for several weeks.
Yes.
So that's renovating the return for it.
We will have to renovate it, and that brings up a very good point. We will at some point have to have drawings done, and we will also have to go through DSA, but we've already been in contact with them and informed them that will have an emergency and we need to move through this very quickly, and they're willing to support us and help us.
And the filters, are they diatomaceous earth or high-rate sand filters?
We have sand filters, 4 sand filters, and they're, at this time, from what I can tell going into the site, there's been no damage to the sand filters. The other heater is in very good shape. The one heater is damaged. Okay. All right, Dr. Alt?
Good evening, trustees. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk to you tonight about the efforts at MJC in serving our students, our community, and our employees that have been affected. First, I'd like to thank our district partners. You've heard all of the effort that's gone into getting our facilities online. That's half of the effort. The other half of the effort has been how do we relocate all of the classes, community education, employees that are involved. So there's been quite an effort that's gone on there, and I'm going to call out specific people for the effort that they've made as we go through this. But as you'll see, just as an outline tonight, there's been impact to our delivery of instruction and our FTES bearing courses. We'll speak about that a little bit more. But as you saw, the library's down as well. So all of our library services and our tutoring services have been affected as well. Community education hasn't been spoken much about yet, but we have quite robust offerings in the summer at the pool of community education that have been impacted, and we'll talk about those a little bit more. And then last but certainly not least, we'll talk about the employees that have been affected, because there's been a real human toll that's been taken on our folks on the campus, as well as district staff as well. So as I move into the impact to the college operations, I'd like to first say that we know this happened on a Sunday. We know it was Father's Day, but there was quite a few people that went to work on this that Sunday, in addition to the district folks, on working on what to do with our classes. So Nick Stavrianidakis and Sherry Suarez are here. They got together right away and started rescheduling classes. So by the time our students came to work or started coming in on Monday morning, they knew where to go. Nick and Sherry had put a list together, and with James Todd and Brian Justin Mark's efforts, there were tents at all of the main entries for our campus. So our students were getting guidance as to where to go as soon as they came on campus, and they never missed a beat. They're resilient, as we know. So appreciation to all of them for that work. Nick's efforts didn't end there, and before we get into this, I'd like to say that Nick probably doesn't want me to toot his horn much, but there hasn't been one class that's been canceled because of this incident, because of the work that Nick and our other deans have put into this, and that's taken a great effort. We did have one that was canceled for low enrollment, but we always have some that are canceled for low enrollment anyways. So to help you understand what that means, Nick's had to deal with, over the summer sessions, 54 classes. And again, only one of those was canceled for low enrollment. Those classes mostly consist of training and conditioning for the varsity sport, and then, of course, our pool and gym and weight courses. So we've talked about some of those being relocated to the high schools, and we really want to make note in our the second bullet point there in the relocation to our partners, both public and private. Modesto City Schools came to us before we had an opportunity to even reach out to them and scheduled a meeting with us. We had quite a few administrators in a meeting with them. I think a couple days, 2 or 3 days after this, where they were very proactive about saying, here's what we think we have to offer. Tell us what you need, the criteria that you need for each of your pools. And because of their efforts, they've provided 10 different sites for us to offer both swimming classes and community education classes, and they haven't charged us any facilities fees. We've also had private partners that reached out to, or we reached out to them, actually Nick did, but in particular, Fit Republic and Relentless Fitness have given us discount rates for our students to be in their facilities and using their gyms and having our weight classes there. So there will be some expense for us to maintain the FTES, but our partners have made sure that that's been reduced as much as possible, as much as they could feasibly. Moving on, fall sports preparation is significantly impacted. I only mentioned football here, but we have 21 sports at the college, and many of them are fall sports. I highlighted football because it's the biggest team, and we have 100 athletes that'll be reporting to the college next week for uniforms and things of the like. They're going to come back to a space that has every PE facility offline on the East Campus, and every PE faculty, staff, student, employee, part-time employee, every one of them, 100% of them have been displaced. So I'll talk a little bit about that more when we talk about the effect to the employees. You saw that some of the most significant damage is to the athletic training area. That's something that we have to provide for the health and well-being of our athletes for, as I mentioned, 21 sports, and that's pretty much been taken completely offline. We're still working on a plan where those will go, but in typical fashion, Nick's been on top of that and inventoried all the equipment we'll need and the type of space that we'll need to facilitate our athletes getting the care that they deserve coming to MJC. We're still working through the impact of the fall scheduling. This timeline that we received is very new information to both the district and the college. And so next week, Nick and Jennifer and I will be working on what we need to do with the fall schedule, what classes will be relocated. We still will have some that will have to be relocated because the pool will not be online. Whether or not we can use the high schools will be a different matter. They're trying to find spaces that we can use that fit in our schedule but don't impair their ability to deliver their own education. And because they're K-12 sites, we can't, as adults, be on their sites when they're open. So we may end up having to cancel some things that require a pool if ours isn't open. Moving forward to library and support services, and then moving back to the timeline, and then moving all the way back. So library and support services, this is a key area for us. The entire library, as you have seen, has been taken offline. For obvious reasons, the library is important to instruction, but we don't just have library services in there. We have tutoring services as well. We have computer labs, and there's a quite robust offerings by librarians on for students on how to do research. And so those have all been relocated to Founders Hall. And I'd like to mention specifically Jillian Daly and the work that she's done. She has all of the faculty and staff that are, for the most part, in the library. And she's worked relentlessly to make sure that we were able to stand those services up as soon as possible in other spaces. I'd also like to mention Dr. Nancy Sill as well, because they partnered together to make sure that there were spaces for our students to go that were effective for the type of services they needed. In Founders Hall, our librarians have also stepped up, so they're taking shifts in Founders Hall in a space that's not really conducive to offering their research assistance to students, but they've done that and they have it covered there so the students can get that help. One of the biggest impacts that we've seen in the library is that, for obvious reasons, access to all of the books, but most importantly, the reserve books that our students that can't afford the books will go into the libraries and they'll utilize the reserve books, and those have been taken entirely offline. We did have some of those available. We do have some of those available at the West Campus, but it's not to the extent that we can serve all of our students because we've lost about half of our reserves. But again, our librarians and with Jillian's leadership have stepped up and made sure that they make it work as best as possible for students. Moving on to community education, this has been less considered, but just as much impactful. We have quite a robust offering. I'd like to mention a couple of people here. Pedro Mendez and Elizabeth Orozco-Whitkey have been just as tireless as Nick in making sure that our important community members in the Modesto Area Swim Club and the Blue Tide Aquatics have had places to go. Unfortunately, they've been displaced quite a ways away and have been out, in some cases, clear out to Oakdale High School initially, but they've been brought back in closer. We have all their offerings and many others at Bayer High and Modesto High School. We had quite a significant amount. If you've never been on the MJC campus in the summer, you'll see a lot of kids walking around in swimsuits, and they make their way into the Morris building and they tell us how fun these classes are. And they've been displaced. So they've also gone to area high school pools. We have experienced a loss of revenue in the community education area because we've had to cancel some of those offerings. And enrollment's been lower than what we would hope in some of those areas just because of the effort to travel into farther reaches in our district to avail themselves to the programs. We've also had the loss of some equipment in terms of pool noodles, kickboards, and flags. We are only paying for direct personnel costs. The Modesto City Schools, and I think it's the case with Oakdale High School as well, agreed not to charge any facilities use fees. So if they have to have a custodian on duty to open it or to clean it, they'll charge us directly for those costs. Where we're scheduled in the middle of their day where they already have staff on and they don't have to bring on extra staff, they're not charging us anything. So, you know, they have to be, as we'd be respectful for the public funds, so they're only charging us that, which would be a net add to their expenditure. So they've been fantastic partners. We didn't even ask them to do that. They offered it in the first reach out to us.
That when they want to use some of our athletic facilities, that we charge them for the use of that, and yet they come back and are generous to us.
Well, one of the takeaways from this that we all had, and there were several district or college administrators and Modesto City Schools administrators in a meeting that we had, was that we need to address this ahead of time. We need to have contractual arrangements and insurance arrangements and things like that, so that when this happens, that we don't have to have these type of meetings, that we have all the infrastructure in place. It's more likely that it would happen to them because of all their facilities, but in this case, it was our turn, and hopefully through the chancellor's leadership and in his direction that we'll be able to put these things in place. So when and if it happens to them or us again, that we don't have to put as much effort into securing the facilities. We can just, hit the call button and start making scheduling arrangements. So it's really been a good relationship. I think started with them, and I think we can take it even farther from this being a start out of an unfortunate situation. The last piece, and again, I want to mention this is last, but certainly not least. We have had an extensive amount of employees that have been affected by this, and in a real visceral way. In just MJC, in the buildings that you've seen, we've had 65 employees that include faculty, staff, student employees that have been displaced, and many of them have lost years and years of work that they've been committed to that they can't get back to. And we struggle regularly on our daily calls with saying, we understand you need your work and we understand you're committed, but we can't let you back in the spaces for health and safety reasons. And for us, that makes sense, and that's the right business move. But for the employees, what they're experiencing is, I come to work every day to contribute, and now I can't contribute. I've been really just, I have to sit in a chair and try and find something productive to do because I can't do my work because I don't have access to everything. And so we'll take away from that we need to do a better job on our continuity of operations plans, but that's part of the real effect on employees, that they can't contribute on a day-to-day basis like they have been able to. The employees that have been displaced have been across PE, health education, library, academic senate, distance education, and YFA. We have, to the extent possible, tried to offer access through electronic and hard copy files. We've moved spaces. We've moved people to temporary spaces the best we can. Some computers have been recovered from the site. Dr. Yeager worked with Judy for us to be able to go in and get the most critical machines out of the spaces, but we couldn't get them all, so we're still working at a deficit there. But really, at the end of the day, those are all business things that we can tend to and we can manage. But the most important thing I think that I could say for MJC administration is that we've seen the real impact, and I know the district has as well, the real impact to people, that on more than one occasion we've seen people that are in tears, that they're upset that they can't get back to their personal items, that they can't do their work. And sometimes in the business processes, we lose how important it is to the individuals to make their contribution. So we've, in concert with Vice Chancellor Legaria, we've had quite an effort to make sure we push out regularly the EAP services and have our employees know that those are confidential services and they're there for this very purpose. But at the college, we've also tried to extend that further. We had this week, in fact, we had a session where we invited all the displaced people to come into a session to talk to them about the information that we knew to be true in terms of the timelines of them getting back into the spaces and whatnot. But we also, under Dr. James Todd's leadership, had Eric Garcia, who's a trained crisis counselor, come in and talk to our employees about how to deal with stress and strategies to cope. And then we also had a separate session where just people who thought they needed a follow-up to that were able to come in that afternoon. And we're still working on having more of those sessions as well. And as we have more meetings where we bring the folks together, I've had several volunteers. Dr. Yeager in particular said she'd like to be there when we have these meetings. Dorothy Pimentel offered to be there as well, and I know Judy would as well. We wanted to make an overt statement when we open these facilities that James and I and Jennifer would walk through those facilities and re-enter them with the employees so they know that we feel confident enough to go back into the spaces, and Dr. Yeager wants to do the same with us. The number one theme that we've heard from the employees through these different kinds of engagements is, how will we know that it's safe to go back in? And that's not an indictment on any of the work that's being done. It's just that an incident has happened that's really shaken them, and they're worried about their own safety going back into these spaces. So I think as we continue, that's something that we'll have to keep to the forefront. And I know the timeline and the presentation that we've had here today will be really helpful to help people understand the process that we're going to go through, and then we can deal with the human impact as we continue to move forward. And that's all I have for you. Unless you have questions about the college specific, then I'll yield the floor back to Judy.
Al, if I could just add one thing, we got hot off the press word from EAP that EAP services are available to any district employee. You don't have to be full-time. It can be part-time, it can be adjunct, it can be short-term contract. So that need not be a limiting factor. And also they are willing to provide on-site counseling services, and that can be arranged through Human Resources. Catherine Pritchard will happily coordinate that too. And I'm thinking that your walkthrough day might be a good day for us to have some EAP counselors present on site, set up in a space that's confidential, and they can avail themselves of that.
Perfect. That's fantastic. I'd like to mention, I wish I'd have covered this in the first place, is that one of the gaps that, and Gina touched on it, that we realized through this incident is that some of our part-time employees, and many are in PE, don't have necessarily the same services. And one of our deans, I think, was really thoughtful on that. Pedro Mendez mentioned that, and it kind of brought it up on the radar. And that's the part of the team when we get everybody together and start talking about what are the pieces that we're missing. There's always somebody that brings that nugget forward like that, and I really appreciated that Pedro did that. And now we're filling that gap, and I really appreciate that, and I know that they will as well.
Any questions for Dr. Alt?
And maybe I'm getting confused with the cities, but do we have an emergency operations plan? How did that integrate?
Yes, we do. We have one in effect. We've had one in effect for probably the last decade or so.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, we're actually in the process of updating it right now, and we're going to be working with the college to help them with new continuity of operations plans so that we can put some of the plans in place that Dr. Alt was talking about. Thank you.
I just want to thank Vice President Alt and the staff at MJC for responding so effectively to this incident. I will share my own perspective. I was at home when I was told of the incident. I came down and I was shocked at the scale of the damage, because when I walked down the alleyway, I could still smell chlorine and the amount of debris and shrapnels all over the place. And then when I walked to the other end of the street, there were district employees over there, and they pointed out to me some pieces of metal had been found over 300 feet away from where the explosion took place. So I'm really thankful that it happened at such an early hour, and it was on a Sunday. And since then, the district staff have been facilitating the work behind the scenes most of the time with the insurance, with the investigators, and many of them, and with vendors who are supposed to come and help us. So the district staff, I just want to thank them. Judy, your staff, and of course from MNO, I know they consider, it's part of the job. They were on call on that day. But I want to express my sincere thanks to all the staff involved, the district staff and the college staff. Next item on my report.
No, excuse me. Chair Garrett, I had some questions. I just didn't have them for Al.
Okay.
Because Judy said we're going to have questions at the end. And my question came from Susan's presentation. We were told that this explosion was caused by a CO2 canister that exploded. But we were also told that there's an open investigation going on. So I don't understand what it is they're investigating or what the possible findings might be. What are they looking for? Just
Okay. Bring it up even closer. There is we know that a CO2 tank exploded. We know that because we found pieces of it, large pieces and small pieces, and we know that caused the other one to shoot across the alley and shrapnel went everywhere. and caused, when it went through a window, for instance, it didn't just break the glass, it torqued the frame. And then you have, not only do you have chemicals in the building from the chlorine cloud, but you also have to deal with asbestos and potential lead. So that's the basis of what occurred. But the question becomes, why did it occur? So CO2 tanks don't just explode for no particular reason. The tank had been filled the Wednesday prior, and Judy, you please feel free to correct me, had been filled the Wednesday prior. There was I think the first phone call was made to our vendor. We have a vendor who supplied the tank, installed the tank, and then they contract with another vendor to fill the tank. So it was installed the prior Wednesday before the accident, and then it was filled the next Wednesday, the Wednesday before the accident occurred. And there were, people heard odd sounds, and so we did call the vendor, and the vendor made an appointment to come out and look at the tank on Monday morning. So there, from the description given, the vendor did not appear to think this was an emergency. So because of the, for one thing, it is a rather large claim. And so if there's any one that our insurance company can go back on to get part of this claim, they're going to do that. So the fire investigator is, that is the point of the fire investigation. And secondarily, while this does happen occasionally for CO2 tanks to explode, my understanding is it doesn't happen that often. So all of them, our insurance company, the manufacturer of the tank, and the vendors would like to know why. So that is why the fire investigator hired by the insurance company was, of course, had access first, did a thorough investigation of the site first, and then shortly thereafter, I believe it was this week, on perhaps Tuesday, he did have the tank manufacturer, the company who installed the tank, and the vendor who filled the tank. They were all allowed on site with the fire investigator to do an investigation. And this is not uncommon because there is a common goal to figure out what happened. So that's why.
Thank you, that helps.
Okay. Anything else?
Next item on my report is the international education, the recent trip to Dubai by Vice President Brian Sanders and Dean Klaus Tenbergen.
We come bearing gifts and wearing our official Ski Dubai shirts that we bought at the ski resort in Dubai. From our hosts, I'm bringing to you some dates, one of the few products that's actually produced in the country of Dubai, and some camel milk chocolates that are shaped like camels and made from camel's milk. There's only enough of those for the front panel, but we have another collection. You got the toothpicks there, and here's some napkins to pass those around if you like. Those are stuffed dates. They're quite lovely. Pull up our picture. So as was approved by the board in, I think must have been our May meeting, Dr. Tenbergen and I had a chance to go to Dubai to explore educational opportunities in Dubai, and it was quite an adventure. We were there for about a week, arrived Sunday night and had meetings Monday through Friday, and left on Friday evening. So our hosts for the event were Professor Hasnain. He's sitting there on the left, and then he's the CEO of academics for for this Educare management company. This is a company, it's based in London. They're trying to start an educational institution in Dubai that's focused on vocational and career technical education training. Mr. Otto Kilimanani was also our host. He lives in Dubai. He's a businessman there. Most of his work is done in trade with services and goods with some of the military bases, whether it's American bases or other bases that are there in Dubai. So I think Klaus and I were both struck by the whole motto here, nothing is impossible in Dubai. We went to some of their monuments. This one was the place called the Dubai Frame, which is this big, almost like the St. Louis Arch, but bigger and broader and more golden, because that's the way they do that in Dubai. There was another hotel here. The word impossible is not in the leaders' dictionaries. No matter how big the challenges, strong faith, determination, and resolve will overcome them. So this is the motto of the country. And this entire city, the new part of Dubai, has been built from the desert floor on a former military base since 2003. We were struck how they built the entire Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, from design to construction conclusion in 6 years. And we think about Measure E and how long it took us to remodel Founders Hall. So the whole city is built, they started with the Burj, they started with some of the downtown area. There's massive amounts of construction. They are not constrained by normal rectangular shapes like our cities are. You see, here's a building with a hole in the middle of it. What you're looking at there is the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. If you were to watch Ghost Protocol, the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, I came home and watched that. Tom Cruise is up there at the top of this thing, swinging out the windows, and it's pretty fun. They're not satisfied with the building being just the tallest in the world. They also turn it into a giant video screen, and down below it there's a fountain, and they've got music that's blasting. It's like being at Caesars in Las Vegas, yeah. And then Ski Dubai. We were able to go inside of this. It's at the end of a giant shopping mall called the Mall of the Emirates, and it's actually a ski slope that you can see up there behind us, and lots of little kids in there taking lessons, and yeah.
It puts Pinecrest to shame.
Yeah. So our week consisted of a series of meetings. We met with government officials talking about some of the rules and regulations. We met with hotel owners and restaurant managers. We met with, there's another one here. We met with our hotel chain, someone in, which hotel was it again? The Marriott Hotel. So Dubai is a governmental center and an economic center for the Middle East. So in Dubai was the center for Marriott hotels for everything from North Africa all the way through the Middle East and into Southeast Asia. We talked about the role of Dubai currently and how they're growing into the future. They're currently based on oil, and they're working on changing that to be more business and tourism based as well. And we talked, Klaus, if you ever go somewhere with Klaus, you'll find that he just talks to whoever he's going to talk to. He goes up to the folks at the desk and he's chatting them up. And so this bullet is Klaus. He discussed opportunities with the local service employees, but just neat people from all over the world. So we went to meet with government officials. There's two primary areas of education that they have in Dubai. There's one center called the Dubai Knowledge Park, and the other one is Dubai International Academic City. They're partnering with educational institutions across the world to establish branch campuses in their locations. This just struck us on the way in. The government agency hosting called the Customer Happiness Center. It's just what it is.
But everything is about happiness. They have Happiness Street, Happiness Shopping Mall, a lot of happiness around in Dubai.
It was awesome. Inside of it, and these pictures are for you, there was a series of birds, and you can tell me what kind of birds. I think there's parakeets on the left, and but they were just open. Amazons. See, she's my bird expert. And this was the very homey. There's nets hanging from the ceiling and green carpets. And then they had these nice little glass rooms on the side, and we had our meetings about what we can do in the country. It's pretty neat. So we talked about skilled and service labor. This was surprising, stunning to us. 10% of the population are Emiratis, which are citizens of the country, and 90% of the population of the entire city of Dubai are brought in from other countries as expatriates. Okay, they're brought in from all sorts of places, mostly Southeast Asia, India, and Northern Africa is what we mostly saw. But what else did you see?
And there were some Central African people, but it was surprising that in 5 hours radius of Dubai, half the world population lives. So they have a lot of people to pull from to get them in as workers.
In a 5-hour flight of Dubai, there's half the world's population. They said that for every job that they have available, they have potentially 1,000 people lined up for it. And so they go to other countries, they go to India, they want to build a tall building, so they'll go to India and they'll find the laborers there, and they'll come in on contract, and they'll work on a work visa to construct this buildings all over town. They're working really hard to get done for the World's Fair, which is going to be there in 2020. So if you want an exciting adventure, go to the World's Fair in Dubai in 2020. So these are some of the folks that we met during our times that were able to work with us. On the left is a driver. They took us on a desert safari. That was pretty cool. Klaus didn't like it. The gentleman in the middle was cooking breakfast at the Burj Khalifa. We'll show you a picture, or the Burj Al Arab. We'll show you a picture of that in a second. And then the lady here was serving us tea. It is a city of contrasts. It's kind of a picture of the waterfront with some of the old boats that are there. This is the Burj Al Arab. It's one of the fanciest, best hotels in the world. Klaus, my partner in crime here, finagled us a pass to get past the security gate, to get past the security guard at the front, to actually get into the lobby, but they didn't let us go up the elevator. They let us go down the elevator to the basement, so it was kind of interesting. Really nice hotel, and in contrast, you can see the old part of the city, so it's very much a new and old. So what did we learn in our visit? There is an ongoing need for skilled labor. They keep importing folks from outside of the country. And there is no provider of vocational career technical education in Dubai like we would provide. There's also, you are enjoying here the only agriculture that we saw, which was palm orchards and the palm dates that were grown there. The society is very open to American culture and then American certifications. We went to the Mall of Dubai, and it was just full of every Rodeo Drive store that you can imagine. Any big mall, it's all there. And then the hotel chains do provide ongoing training to their employees. This was a bit of a sparkle for us, where these hotel chains bring all their employees together and train them on the skills and the expectations of this fancy hotel chain. And that certification works well for the folks that are in the company, but may not translate to another company. So we saw an opportunity potentially with partnering with some of those corporate trainers to provide American certifications to go along with some of the training they're already providing. There are a number of issues that still remain for us to consider. Who is the target audience? When you're importing 90% of your labor, who will be the ones who are in training in classes to become the next generation of laborers? Accreditation issues that we're going to have to look into. There's some faculty contractual issues, faculty going on a long flight, how is that compensated? Those kinds of things would be involved. And the nature of instruction, we could provide distance education from Columbia College campus, but is that what they're looking for the folks in their country? We're going to have to get that worked out. And then there's some academic freedom issues for us to consider as well. So then it did. We came back and we said, well, so now what? What do we do with this information? We can't jump into actually offering classes in Dubai right away, but we've really kind of taken the inspiration of educating people at a distance, and we're doing that through expanding partnerships in our area, in our service area, and in fact up through Jackson Rancheria. Through Roger's assistance, we're working on establishing video training for our culinary program into the Jackson Rancheria and establishing a cohort of culinary apprentices working there. And I don't know if your folks are aware, how our service area goes up into Tuolumne County and a little bit of Calaveras County. Just north of us in Calaveras County is San Joaquin Delta's service area, but then the next county beyond that is Amador County, and it's not in any college's service area. So we're looking at that as an opportunity for us to sort of leverage what we learned in going to Dubai on how to just go 50 miles up the road instead. We're also working on institutionalizing our apprenticeship efforts, trying to make sure that those are good long-term. You're familiar with our apprenticeship grant. We're coming towards the end of the grant, and now we need it to be viable long-term as a non-grant supported program. So we're working on that and trying to figure out other kinds of on-the-job training. So with that, are there any questions about Dubai? again.
I have one. Is this totally a Columbia thing, or could it be an MJC Columbia thing?
Once it's established, it could be an MJC Columbia thing for sure.
We wanted to explore what the needs were, and we found out that the need is broader, could potentially be broader than just career technical education classes. And as we not offer everything, we need the partnership with MJC to do so.
Do we have competitors? Are there other colleges also doing this, or are we on the vanguard?
There are 100 and some odd institutions, colleges. What did we see? Michigan State University was one. So there's a number of colleges that are there that have established branch campuses. There's also a bunch who have gone and started it and pulled it out. But what they haven't established is a vocational training. So that would be the niche market that we would be able to draw into. We were there specifically going to hotels and restaurants talking about hospitality management as an option.
But then we also heard that the demand was in automotive and child development. Welders, of course, due to all the constructions, heavy equipment operation.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. The reason Brian and Klaus were selected to go because the interest originally expressed by the two individuals that you saw in the picture, our host, was for hospitality and culinary arts. And so we went with an open mind. We wanted to see if it will work for this discipline and what other potential discipline could be applicable in this area. And Brian and Klaus also look for opportunities for MJC as well. So I just want to kind of clarify that even though the two of you came from Columbia, you're really looking for opportunities for both colleges. Our hope is that should our effort be successful, it would become a revenue generator for the colleges. The way that our revenue is divided, unfortunately, up till now, revenue earned through international and or out-of-state tuition, basically, there is no incentive for the two colleges to get in it because all of that would come to the district office. As we look at meeting our accreditation recommendations pertaining to total cost of ownership and so forth, I've asked Vice Chancellor Susan Yeager to look at resource allocation, perhaps coming up with a different model. And if the colleges are involved in performing the work, in reaching out to the international community, I would certainly hope that the major part of the revenue that comes in would stay at the colleges, at the respective colleges, and not come straight to the district office and with no incentive at all. So what we were hoping for is a revenue generator that would directly benefit the colleges. So we have more to learn, but it seems like we have learned quite a bit of information that could be helpful to us, not only in the international arena, perhaps as close as 50 miles away, just north of us. My next report is regarding the credit by exam. The board asked me to provide an update pertaining to a speech given by Andrew Skidmore. I'm happy to report that I had an opportunity to sit down and meet with him just the other day. A great meeting, and I was very impressed with his goals that he has set for himself. He informed me that he is all set to begin at Fresno State, majoring in mechanical engineering. So I'm really thrilled for him, and he was very happy to share with me that he has taken the class in the summer, completed it, and he's all ready to embark on the next portion of his journey. Previously, when he was here, he had asked for a letter of apology, but we have been having discussion. We think that a written statement from the college outlining the chronology of the event, and then, most important of all, the planning for the future by the department and the college regarding specifics of credit by exam, such as clarification of the courses, which courses are available for credit by exam and which are not, and the steps to be involved. And if these were in place, we would certainly want to see that future students would be able to avail themselves of the roadmap to take and have a clear understanding what to expect. Unfortunately, VP Zalet is not here. She is attending a conference in Los Angeles. So in her absence, I'm going to read a little excerpt on the planning that is taking place at the college. One of it pertains to the process. So she says, the form to be given to students and statements in the catalog are being reconciled so that they are consistent in message and process. The form will be ready to go to the College Council at the first fall meeting of the year. At this meeting, there will be opportunity to educate all constituent groups on campus about the necessary changes to the form and gain consensus. The deans have been instructed to locate and remove any divisional or departmental documents that predate our official form. It has been communicated out that there is only one form to use and one process to follow. The official form has been simplified to align with Title V language. And then the campus preparedness, the Vice President of Instruction has spoken with the President of the Academic Senate and asked the Senate to undertake a conversation about credit by exam. There is a certain philosophical understanding and consensus, which we must gain in order to best serve students in this area. Beginning in the fall, this productive dialogue will allow departments to share best practices across the campus and focus on removing barriers for students. Deans have been instructed to agendize this topic for the division and department meetings to provide organization and support at that level. The goal is for faculty to identify a list of eligible courses identify a list of eligible courses for credit by exam, and each list will be housed in the respective division offices. So progress is being made at the campus regarding clarifying the procedures, and we hope that we can come up with a language for the written statement that will be issued to Mr. Skidmore that will give an account of his experience here and what we are planning to do in the future. Right? Thank you.
Yes, Alan.
To speak to a couple of issues I just heard about. Number one, I did have the opportunity to talk with Chancellor Young about the initiative concerning Dubai, about which we heard a presentation. I'm always hesitant to say the faculty feel one way or another unless there's actually been a consensus in the appropriate meeting or normally even a vote as to the faculty's position. So I'll speak for myself and for the faculty I've talked to. It's very exciting. I think it's a very, very exciting initiative, and I believe it's if it can be pulled off, if we can be successful for this, it's very good for the college and the community. As to the second issue, I want to thank Chancellor Young again, because I had discussed with him the matters brought up by Mr. Skidmore. And I was able to avail him of some more details and information. And I appreciate the way he's handled this, and I'm sure Mr. Skidmore does too. I want to further comment on something I heard, the excerpt from the letter. Good as far as it goes, but I think something that needs to be clarified. There was a discussion at the first meeting of the College Council and gaining consensus from constituents there. I'm going to reference very quickly YCCD Board Policy 78049, which references Title V of the State Code. That area is under primarily rely on the Academic Senate. And sometimes when I hear descriptions of the process, that doesn't seem to be clear, that there'll be discussion of the Senate, but consensus in the College Council. The legal requirement is for consensus with the Academic Senate per se. And sometimes there's been mistakes about this or misunderstandings. So I hope that's clear going on.
Thank you for clarifying. And I just want to, finally, I want to thank everyone who served on the MJC Presidential Search Committee. And I know that it was a time-consuming process, and I want to thank everyone who submitted feedback. And I just want to mention that I've considered all the feedback and made a decision that would best serve the college and the district. And by going out again, we'll have an opportunity to look for a great leader to come and lead MJC forward and make and build on the greatness of MJC. So thank you.
Any further questions for Chancellor Young?
I just have one comment. I want to thank Mr. Skidmore for his graciousness in resolving this, and as a member of the class of '84, go Bulldogs.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 6, the consent agenda. First, does any member of the board wish to pull any item that is listed on the consent agenda? Okay, and
One correction under the classified probationary appointment, Helen Vania Johansson Martinez has accepted another position outside of the college, so we will not be moving her forward.
okay, so with that correction, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as listed on the posted agenda? Okay. Moved by Trustee Rojas. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Martin. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Move on now to item 7, 7.1. These are action items. 7.1, board policies, second reading. Connie?
Yes, sir. Good evening. We are doing second readings, and as Trustee DeMartini mentioned, we had our Board Policy Committee meeting about a week earlier. There are 9 of these to look at, and there were no recommended revisions coming forward to you. So they're coming forward to you as is.
Okay. And your chair, do you have any final thoughts or comments?
No, I think that the committee did a good job on the first reading to make any corrections, and that's why we saw no more for the second reading. So we'd like, I'll go ahead and move that for the second reading that we adopt these proposed policy revisions as presented in our agenda.
Okay, so moved by Trustee DeMartini to adopt the listed policy changes. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Martin. Any further discussion? Oh,
Yeah, I would please like to address some of the implications of policy 4300, field trips and excursions. Concerns about this policy and procedure were raised in a district council meeting and then in the first reading of the board policy committee. I could not be at the second reading because of teaching schedule conflict, but I understand that some of the trustees present raised some issues. And talk to me afterwards about it. I want to make sure some concerns are heard and perhaps a change made before we move forward. And here it is. The policy as written is pretty sensible. However, there is a contingency that has been coming up for years, and say in the academic senate, advice has been asked of visiting vice presidents of instruction and so on. What do you expect us to do under a certain circumstance, which does occur regularly? And that is, there's a field trip, let's say it's to see a play, to a museum, some public venue, and some student, instead of coming in the provided transportation as expected, shows up on his or her own. Now, maybe missed the van. Maybe, and anybody who's taught knows that you can say it 3 dozen times and someone still doesn't get it. Maybe one physical anthropology instructor brought up an interesting situation he was faced with repeatedly. Just as I took a field trip to the zoo in community college for a physical anthropology class, he takes his students. And it's a trip to the zoo, and despite his way he organizes it, some students just show up and bring their family. Why? Because it's a trip to the zoo. And I will remind everybody it's a public venue. It's not like anybody needs the instructor's permission to be present. So the question has been asked to vice presidents of instruction and other officials before the Senate, what do you expect us to do under those circumstances? Do you expect us to tell the student he or she can't participate? Well, sometimes, besides being questionable in its legality and advisability, how on earth do you do that in a public venue, number one? Number two, would you be expected somehow to penalize the student's grade with the impact on student success and so on and so forth? And completely exclusive of any standing policy or procedure we have. The answer we always got was no, don't worry, we don't expect you to do that. So while this was going through, and on its face, it's not problematic, but I have asked the question, what do we do under such a circumstance? Now, instead of in the past being told, well, you're not expected to penalize or prevent a student from participating, the advice we got lately was call the president of the college. Now, I know from experience, I used to direct the forensics team and take weekend trips to tournaments, that this event, this kind of situation can occur anytime, day or night. I brought that up. And I was told by the president, who's not here to discuss it, don't worry, I keep my cell phone with me all the time. This still does not seem like a very practical answer. And I'll get back to why, even if it's true, even if the phone is answered, it's not adequate. I was told that the VPI will have the phone if the president doesn't, and we've also been told call the night administrator. Now, not all instructors know. I virtually never know who the night administrator is at a given time. I would also point out that the night administrator changes quite often. And there would be an issue of consistency once you got a hold of someone. Now, let's just, putting aside the fact the president will have his or her phone by the bedside, what happens when you contact that administrator? Because we weren't told what would happen next. We weren't told the administrator will make a decision as to the student's participation or not. We were just told, make the call, repeatedly make the call. Well, what does happen next? Does the president, the night administrator, or someone else say, I'll adjudicate this on the spot. I will decide whether or not the student gets to participate. If that person decides the student doesn't get to participate, really? Do you really want to do that? Over the phone under these circumstances without a clear direction and policy about that? Now, it seems to me you could consider it a disciplinary issue, which would be separate from the student's academic participation in the class, because it is not interfering with other people's participation academically. So I'm not sure what happens next. We've repeatedly asked the question, been given no answer whatsoever. I would think that maybe this question could be answered some other way, but it has not been answered yet. And I have to admit, I felt a little dismissive. It was a bit dismissive. So,
have you a problem with the policy as it's written, or what's your problem?
Yeah, I will bring that up because in the past we were given direction as to, okay, this is what happens next. Don't worry, just allow the student to participate. Now, as written, and this came out in discussion, I said, okay, this is what we've been told. What about that eventuality? And the only response I've gotten repeatedly is, call the president of the college or the VPI, or sometimes we're told the night administrator. Now, I would suggest that there's a possible one-sentence amendment that would tell the instructors what to do under those circumstances. My concern is that it's left unclear. It's left very foggy.
Well, Alan, let me just interrupt you for a minute.
Sure.
So in your hypothetical field trip, is this a student that is enrolled in the class or
Yes.
not?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So they're
For example,
enrolled in
a
the class.
student in the physical anthropology class who's enrolled but decides instead of going in the van, I'm going to take my own transportation and bring my family. After all, it's a day at the zoo. Right.
Okay.
Now, I certainly, when I was handling field trips, had situations where someone, because of very good reason, couldn't make the van and just came anyway. Now, in terms of the speech team, you have such advanced planning, and such
Well,
relative.
wait, hold on a minute. I'm
Yeah.
trying to speed this along here. So so they're part of the class, but they didn't go in the van. They showed up in their own car and they brought mom, dad, aunt, and uncle, and 2 of their siblings with them.
Well,
And so, I mean, I suppose that they're part of the class. It would be up to the instructor.
Well,
to set-
actually, I believe Connie can, we did discuss some of this, and I think Connie can address this, and then if there's still questions, let's go
I'm
back.
glad somebody can. Go right ahead.
So thankfully, Professor McKissick has brought this up at the Policy and Procedure Committee that passed through these documents for your recommendation. Also brought it up at District Council, where we have the vice chancellors, the vice presidents, the presidents of the college, the chancellor, and all of the constituents there represented. So he did bring that up there as well. We had a discussion. And then also brought it up at the Board Policy Committee, where we had the 3 trustees there. So I have had some time to look into this. And while we don't talk about what happens when students transport themselves in the policy, because policy statements are really board policy statements, we do talk about it in the administrative procedure. And so when we're looking at the administrative procedure, starting in line 30, that paragraph, line 32, students may transport themselves with appropriate approval as needed. And then we have a student transportation board policy and AP that we look at for field trips. So we have addressed when students transport themselves, how they can do that. Now, separately, on the MJC website, it talks about travel. It talks about field trips. And so we're not silent on the issue. There is some direction and guidance on that. So specifically talking about who you call, the discussion that we had in the Board Policy Committee is that we definitely have some guidance in MJC's website. I just went on search field trips and those guidelines came up for me. There are forms in place where you list which students are traveling with you or traveling on their own. But you list those students and you say who's going to be at the field trip, regardless of how they get there. And so we do have those forms in place. And so I would submit, and this is what we talked about in our discussion, is that if a faculty member is coordinating a field trip, then they're asking these questions ahead of time. They're saying, who's the administrator on duty while I'm away from the campus? And if they're concerned about that issue, then they can really have that, have that phone number and have that ready in advance. But there are forms in place, and there is guidance on the MJC website.
May I address that? Okay, I'm aware of the forms, and it's beside the point of everything I just talked about. In fact, I was there at the inception of the forms. I was there under President Zellers at MJC when it was decided we would make exceptions and the president's office could grant exceptions to travel. That's all planned ahead of time. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a student shows up anyway.
Well,
Maybe if Mr. McKissick could give us your proposal for the one sentence?
Yeah, I would say that, it's beside call an administrator on the site once a student shows up anyway. I would suggest this sentence, and it could be added, what I have right after line 33. In the event a student transports himself or herself to a field trip or excursion destination without obtaining appropriate approval, the supervising faculty or staff member should report the matter to the appropriate administrator, for example, division dean, in a timely manner during the regular business day. Then the instructor has direction. Now, at that point, if which there is no direction now, all the forms we just heard about are beside the point of everything I'm talking about, right? So at that point, the instructor would know, okay, I got to report this, and then the division dean or appropriate administrator could decide what to do. A letter, a discussion, nothing, whatever.
Well, I'm gonna bring it back to the board.
Sure.
I'm just gonna, I don't profess to know everything about, I've taken lots of classes, honored to graduate from MJC. I think it's within the purview of the faculty. If the faculty member has gone through all these steps and the student has shown up on their own, as you stated, it's a public venue. They're more than welcome to avail themselves of the wildlife and the fauna there at the public venue. But, they're not going to get credit for the class because they haven't followed so I'm going to bring it back to the board for approval. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by the board?
Well, I just want to say, we also discussed that the instructor can carry forms with him, that student can immediately sign, and we thought that the dean has to make it very clear what the procedure is before approving the field trip. And there may be some weaknesses there, and the dean, dean needs to say, this is what we do in this case, da. So I agree that we should just vote on it.
Okay. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We'll move on now to 7.2, board policy, first reading.
Okay, so the first readings, here we are. We have gone through now with this slate. We have 10 documents ready for you. And so when we get to the second reading and we move through those, you will have gone through all of the chapter 4,000. So thank you guys so much. Remember, this is about 40 documents that start at the Policy and Procedure Committee, go to the District Council, go to the Board Policy Committee, and then end here. It takes about 6 or 8 months, so this is a big task, and we do this push each year. So thank you guys so much for your really in-depth review, and we do go through these things in detail long before they get to you, but once they get to you, we have another great set of proofreading eyes on them. So. We have 10 documents here, starting with college calendars, and you do have some changes to that one. And the change to that one recommended is on the administrative procedure, and that is line 41. We made a reference to the Yosemite Faculty Association contract when we were talking about what the process is for determining the academic calendar, but we wanted to add in there the notation that it's section 3.4. So just help somebody wasn't having to scroll through the whole document. Now that may change as, new contracts come up, and so we're gonna try to be very diligent in keeping that updated. And so we will, that recommended change. I will say that it is, if we do get a new contract and that section isn't changed, we do our best to get that done. So that was a recommended change there. Any questions on that one? Any additional questions there? We went through this pretty in depth, just to let you guys know. We actually looked at the YFA contract. We looked at the 3 steps that there are to create the academic calendars. We talked about the board and when they approve the calendar a year ahead, and then the tentative calendar 2 years ahead, and kind of what that cycle looks like. So we went through a lot of discussion on that. Okay, so I'll move to 4040 library services. And you do have a recommendation for revision there, and that's on line 11, again in the reference section. The Civil Code section 1798.90 can actually be referred to as the Reader Privacy Act. And so while we had that written in the board policy statement, we wanted a little bit more clarification to help when we're kind of clicking on that hyperlink as to what does that Civil Code section refer to. So just additional clarification for folks reading that. Anything else on that one? Okay. Open classes is the next one. .8059, sorry.
Library acquisitions is the next change.
Oh, there we go, yeah. Library acquisition, sorry, 4-8061, and that is in the board policy line 8. We removed the phrase that support the curriculum. And here's why. I'll read the whole sentence, so we're not saying, gosh, we don't want to support the curriculum. Of course we do, but we wanted to expand that so that it's in alignment with the first point there. So the full sentence reads, the purpose of the library collections is to support the mission of the college by providing books, journals, non-print media, and information in other formats, period. And then number 1 on line 12 says, books and other library resources should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people of the community the library serves. So we didn't want to just limit it, that supports the curriculum, because then we say we want to broaden that a little bit. So that's why the recommendation to remove that phrase. And if there are no other questions on 8062 or 8063, syllabus 8065 was the next change. And that is on line 7. The recommendation was to add in consultation with the college president. So the full sentence reads, the chancellor, comma, in consultation with the college presidents, shall establish procedures to ensure that all Yosemite Community College District students are provided with either a written syllabus or electronic version during the first week of classes. And so we do have written administrative procedures there, but the board members at the board policy committee felt as though we wanted to make some reference to the college presidents and have them here and accountable for working with faculty and their vice presidents and the process at the college to make sure that this happens. And I think that those were the only changes recommended. There are no other questions on any of them?
That's it. Anybody have any other questions for Connie? Nope.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Okay, we'll move on now to item 7.3, Columbia College Child Care Center Agency Annual Report. So is this just a routine and customary item? So the recommended action of the Board of Trustees accepts the Columbia College Child Care Center Agency Annual Report as attached to the July 11, 2018 agenda. So
I'll move that we accept that.
Second.
moved by Trustee DeMartini, seconded by Trustee Hallinan. Any further questions, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Move on now to item 7.4, which is the 5-year construction plan. You all should have received an item in your mailbox. May have fit into some, may not have fit into others. But pretty detailed document, and I'll turn it over to Vice Chancellor Yeager.
Hello again, and I do not have a PowerPoint, so this is a quick presentation. So we are asking for your approval to submit the 2024 5-year construction plan to the Chancellor's office. The 5-year construction plan, at its simplest, is a statement of the college's capital outlay needs projected over the next 5 years based on our existing facilities, the space standards for the various space types, and the enrollment projections provided to us by the State Chancellor's office. The metric for measurement is the capacity load measurement, which essentially at its, again, at its root is measuring people to capacity. 100%, you have everything you need. Less than 100, you need more space. Over 100, you have too much space. So generally speaking, Columbia College's capacity load ratios range from 84% in AV TV, which is an odd category that no one understands and it doesn't really count, and then to 214% in lecture. So Columbia is generally overbuilt. They may be eligible for a modernization project, which if you can decrease an overbuilt situation, you can be eligible. MJC capacity load ratios range from 44% in AVTV to 186% in lecture. MJC has the potential both for modernization and in the future for new library space, given that the library capacity load ratio is 67% and AVTV is 44%. And those two capacity load ratios tend to line up together. So we are submitting an initial project proposal for the music building modernization at MJC. We did submit it last year. It was not eligible. It is eligible this year, so we may actually, it may actually be approved. And if that happens, we are requesting 100% state funding. And if the IPP is approved, we can submit a final project proposal next year. But the earliest date, if we will have to compete next year with all the other FPPs submitted, and the earliest possible date, if we are successful for the project to come online, would be 2023-24, about that time. So that's what I have for you tonight on the 5-year construction plan. I promised it would be quick. And do you have any questions?
Any questions? Okay, so the recommended action of the Board of Trustees: receive the plan and approves it for submission to the California Community College Chancellor's Office per Board Policy 3600, capital construction. So I'll entertain a motion. We'll give it to Trustee Hallinan. Made the motion, seconded by Trustee Rojas. Any further questions? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move on now to item 8.1, comments from the Board of Trustees, and we'll start with our student trustee.
So since our last meeting, I've attended weekly ASMGC trainings. I'm looking forward to attending the trustee training next month in San Francisco, and I will also be attending the leadership session with ASMGC next month. Lastly, I'm looking forward to meeting with Columbia student leaders when they return in August. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Any questions for our student trustee? Okay, Trustee Hallinan.
Thank you. As you recall, in 2016, I presented an item to try and fight this water grab from our area, and you've probably all read the latest on that. It's even worse than anticipated. So with your concurrence, I'd like to follow up on that with just a letter again, just reiterating basically what we said in 2016, if that's agreeable.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds fine with me.
Thank you.
Trustee Martin.
I participated in the Policy and Procedures Committee.
Okay. Trustee Rojas.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Trustee DeMartini.
Thank you. One of the things that I tried to do is that in the district that I represent, I tried to meet with the superintendents of the school districts that are in MJC, that are in Area 4. And so I had the opportunity to meet recently with the head of the Gustine, the superintendent of the Gustine School District. Now, Gustine, if you don't know, is in Merced County, and he didn't know that he was in the YCCD district. This happens a lot. My district actually goes all the way down to Santanella. Which I think is odd, but it's based on the school districts, the K-12 school districts. Anyway, his name is Brian Ballinger, and he gave me his card, and he's looking forward to talking with our new MJC president. Maybe it'll have to be our new interim MJC president, but he was very excited about learning that he was in our district and would be interested in participating with us. He really thinks that the dual enrollment would actually be of more value to his students than like AP classes and that they have, because he thinks that it would be more concrete because it's specific credits that they earn at the junior college that can apply. I also attended the due process study session, and as Abe did in the policy and procedure meeting last week, and the presidential forums. I did one other thing that's only tangentially related to community colleges, but my husband is a car fanatic, and 2 weeks ago we went on a national Franklin car tour, and that was housed in Fortuna, and one of the routes that we take each day took us by the College of the Redwoods, which I'd never seen before. It's very lovely, but really isolated area. So, and tonight after the meeting, I'm going back to Rohnert Park to finish the Pierce Arrow National Tour with my husband.
All right, thank you, Ann. Trustee Beggs?
Okay, am I on? Since the last board meeting, I went to the June 18th candidate forums for MJC president. It was great to see a packed room, and it was packed. The June 19th study session on due process, and I'd like to thank all who attended and gave feedback as we work to make our policies as equitable as possible. And the June 19th board debriefing meeting, the July Policies and Procedures Committee meeting with Connie and Lynn and Ann. And also the board preview meeting. And even in the summer, there's lots to do. And I'd just like to thank the Chancellor for working to keep the lines of communication open and for keeping us in the loop on things like the implementation of the new software, which will track district travel in a way that we can understand.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. I too attended the board study session, and it wasn't there for the whole time because I had another thing I had to go to, but I feel strongly about this issue with due process. I think for me personally, we're making it maybe a little more difficult than it needs to be, and I'll be glad when we can just put this thing to rest and get it behind us and treat all employees the same. So I'm looking forward to that. I had a couple meetings with the Chancellor. Thank you very much. Very productive. I had a couple meetings with constituents on some various topics, but the last thing I had a 9-hour meeting with Alan McKissick. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't 9 hours, but it was. I will say this about Alan. It may take him a while to get to the point, but you will never find a stronger ambassador for students and student success than Alan McKissick. And everything we talked about was centered on that very topic. We had a great conversation. We talked about a lot of items, and I just appreciate you giving up part of your time to meet with me and talk about what's important to you and ultimately what's important to the district. But I just have to reiterate that, you're never going to find somebody that cares more about students. I know there's a lot of them out there, but Alan is clearly one of them. So thank you, Alan.
My pleasure.
And with that, the next meeting of the Board of Trustees will be held on Wednesday, August the 8th, right back here in this boardroom. And with that, meeting adjourned. Okay, take care. I did my best, so. Okay, we can leave that there. No. Just, the best thing to do with that is just put it in the sheriff.
Oh, no.
It's happened
This is
before.
nothing but on Connie's part, but misdirection office. And quite frankly, I feel I spent some political capital.
Yeah.
I wouldn't